All right. Thank you for joining for today's class, our reading and writing class. We normally do have some more students. Hopefully they'll come in, but I'll begin with our agenda anyways. So we're going to be discussing, as normal, our vocab practice, do a couple of new words. We'll do a paragraph, and we'll write our own paragraph using these two words. We're going to first figure out the definition of the vocab words, and then we'll work on our own writing. And then we'll move on to our novel study. We'll try to answer a couple questions, but at least one is good. And then we'll move on to our um, deeper theme analysis, the theme of power, the psychology of power. So we'll check that out as well. So first things first, vocab. Yan Fei, can you read this slide for me, please?
For decades, residents repeated an apro apocryphal story about a traveler who had once warned the village of an approaching disaster. Whether the tale was true mattered less than the comfort it provided, for it suggests that catastrophe always announces itself in
Sorry,
advance.
can you pronounce this highlighted word again?
Catastrophe?
Okay, it's actually catastrophe.
Oh, catastrophe.
Yep.
Always announces itself in advance. When the first signs of environmental decline appeared, however, the danger proved far more insidious. There was no dramatic warning, no single moment of crisis, only gradual changes that became impossible to ignore once they had already transformed the landscape.
All right. Excellent job. So we have our two vocab words on the screen, apocryphal and insidious. And using these two words and using the rest of the paragraph, I want you to try to figure out the definition of the highlighted words. Make sure when you're answering to use full sentences and to provide an explanation of how you came up with your answer. I do expect around like 2 to 4 sentences. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. All right, so I got one answer submitted so far. I think enough time has passed, so let me just take these up. If anyone else is still writing, please submit as soon as possible. All right. Yeah, and Faye, can you read your answer, please?
I think the word apocryphal means the story about the traveler warning the village of disaster is likely made up and its truth is uncertain. And I think the word insidious means the danger of environmental decline is gradually developing and hard to notice at first, working harms secret.
Okay. So, good stuff using information from the text to back up your answer. So I think the word apocryphal means the story about the traveler warning the village of disaster is likely made up and its truth is uncertain. Nice. Okay, so we kind of mixed in our definition and our explanation together because we're defining the word specifically in the story. For next time, though, try to define the word like just in general. So let's put a note here. Separate the definition from the explanation. Basically, what I'm saying is do not define how the word is used in the story. Just provide a general definition and then explain how it is used in the story. Same thing with the second word. And also, let's try not to start sentences with the word and. There's other ways we can start it, such as in addition. In addition, I think the word insidious means the danger of environmental decline is gradually developing and hard to notice at first, working harm secretly. Instead of working, I think a better word choice would be causing harm secretly. And okay, so that second word, again, same thing. We're providing our definition with the explanation, and it's very specific to the story, but that's not the definition of insidious. Insidious doesn't mean the danger of environmental decline. That's just how it shows in the story. So our definition needs to be a more general sentence. Let's see. That is the only answer I got, so I'm going to move on. Let's check out the provided definitions. Ethan, can you read this slide, please?
Insidious, adjective. Definition. Proceeding in a gradual, subtle way, but with harmful or destructive effects. Difficult to recognize because it develops slowly or deceptively. Examples. The novel portrays prejudice as an insidious force that spreads quietly through ordinary conversations before shaping institutions. Apocryphal. Apocryphal. Adjective. Definition. Of doubt, authentically widely circulated as true, but unlikely to be factual. More boldly describing stories or accounts whose truth is uncertain. Example. The professor dismissed the dramatic anecdote as
Anecdote,
apocryphal, nothing that nothing that no
noting.
reliable historical noting that no reliable historical evidence supporting it.
All right, good stuff. So we have our two words here. Insidious. Now, when we're dealing with the word insidious, it's a more gradual, subtle um, progression of something harmful happening. So things are just slowly becoming worse and worse, more and more destructive. So that would be insidious, a slow development into a negative outcome. Apocryphal, this is something with doubtful authenticity, basically meaning it's hard to believe it as being true. It's hard to view it as factual. It's unable or unlikely to be factual. So that is the definition there. And your task. using both of these vocab words, you're going to include them in the following paragraph. Your paragraph is going to be about a community that's accepted a story to be true for generations, but there's evidence that emerges recently that suggests the story may be false. And now the community must decide whether preserving the myth is more important than confronting reality. So write a short story that explores the relationship between truth, memory, and belief. Uh, I mean, this part's not super important, but as long as you stick to this idea here and you include both vocab words, then you're good. That's all I'm asking for. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. Otherwise, you guys can begin writing. All right, so it's been quite some time. Let's try to get our answers submitted ASAP. Oh, okay. Got an answer. Let's check this out. All right. Ethan, can you read your answer for us, please?
I just realized I forgot to include the second vocab word.
Okay, that's no problem.
As a student in this incidentally created false records and false statements into records slowly records, comma, slowly during his part-time job. Eventually, he told the staff that all of their jobs have been a lie, stating how they are actually not getting paid but getting bank and government loans that they didn't know. Soon after that, the workers had started to doubt the student, but after they saw the records, they went on a rampage. The student walked out with content and satisfaction while making a little extra dollars on top.
All right. Nicely done. So yeah, like you said, try to make sure that both vocab words are included next time, but it's fine for now. So as we know already with the word insidious, the definition had to do with like a gradual progression to something that's harmful. It's gradually getting worse and worse, gradually getting destructive, just slowly depreciating, basically what it is. So as a student insidiously creates false records and false statements into records slowly during his part-time job. Uh, okay, so the phrasing here we can change up. As a student insidiously creates false records and false statements into records slowing during his part-time job. Uh, I guess we can say creates false records and false statements. It slows down progress at his part-time job. So as a student insidiously creates false records and false statements, it slows down progress at his part-time job. Eventually, comma, he told the staff that all of their jobs have been the wrong there, by the way. All of their jobs have been a lie, stating, put a comma here, stating how they are actually not getting paid, but another comma, but getting bank and government loans that they didn't know. Okay, fair. Soon after that, another comma. Let me just grab this one. The workers had started to doubt the student, but after they saw the records, they went on a rampage. The student walked out with contempt and satisfaction while making a little extra dollars on top. A few extra. Okay, not bad. Um, Try to use insidious as an adjective. Having the ly there makes it an adverb. The definition's still correct, still use fine. Just try to make sure that we use it in the form that it is provided. But yeah, as you mentioned, also include the second word. Let's check out our next answer as well. Yan Fei, can you read your answer, please? Yan Fei, if you're there, can you unmute and read your answer? 1030pmEDT 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 Okay, well, I'm just gonna read the answer anyways. So, for generations, the small community, let me put a comma here, had believed in a story about a magical spring that could cure any illness. Their memories were filled with tales passed down by elders, and this story had become a central part of their faith. One day, a group of researchers visited and presented evidence suggesting the story was likely false. Some of the community were in denial, holding tightly to their long-held beliefs and memories of the stories. They argued that the story gave them hope and a sense of identity. Others, however, began to question. They realized that while the truth might shatter their long-standing beliefs, it was also important to face reality. In the end, the community found that the relationship between truth, okay, not bad. Yeah, okay, solid answer. Yan Fei, if you're there, could you read or can you tell me what the definition of this word? Okay, so don't think she's here anymore. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, we're missing the vocab words. So both words entirely missing. Let's move on. Let's check out our novel study. Ethan, can you read this slide for me, please?
Fever Dream is a psychological novel being framed as an urgent conversation between Amanda, a woman who is gravely ill, and a young boy named David. As Amanda struggles to reconstruct recent events, David repeatedly interrupts her, insisting that the only certain detail matters. On, that only certain detail matters. Their fragment dialogue gradually reveals a series of compelling uh, unsettling incidents involving illnesses, environmental contamination, family relationships, and explicable changes in behavior. The novel deliberately withholds com- complete complete explanations, compelling readers to piece together meanings alongside the characters. Rather than offering a conventional mystery, Fever Dream explores fear, motherhood, environmental anxiety, memory, and uncertainty. Its nonlinear structure blurs the boundaries between reality, memory, and imagination, creating an atmosphere in which both the characters and the reader struggle to distinguish certainty from speculations. The novel suggests that some dangers are most frightened precisely because they cannot be fully understood or clearly identified.
All right, good stuff. So, with this story here, the, first sentence that we're dealing with talks about how the conversation is very urgent. And we can tell that almost, immediately because of the way that the story is structured. It's a conversation and it's very fragmented. Both characters are interrupting each other. It's very quick. They're jumping between timelines. Somebody's talking about something from this time. Someone's talking about something that happened in the past. They're just going back and forth. And there's a lot of like rushed conversation, a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty that's at play here. And because of all that, that leads to our main theme, the fact that everything is very unsettled. The theme of um, uncertainty, essentially. So we're going to be, checking this out. We're going to be analyzing the theme, the atmosphere, the characters, how they're talking to each other, what they're talking about. We'll take a look into that. Yanfei, I see your message, so hopefully you're back. Could you read this slide for us, please?
Amanda reflects on the moments before she realized that something was was profoundly wrong. Looking back, she recognized that the warning signs were present long before she understood their significance. At the time, nothing seemed unusual. enough to demand attention. Each strange detail appeared small, almost accidental, and I gathered them the way one collects loose threads without imagining they belong to the same fabric. Only afterward did I understand that fear rarely announces itself with certainty. More often, it waits until ordinary moments have accumulated into a pattern too complete to dismiss, leaving us to wonder whether the danger began the first unnoticed sign or with our decision to ignore it.
All right. Excellent job. So, using this passage and the summary, which I'll provide for you guys, try to answer this first question. Analyze the significance of the statement, fear rarely announces itself with certainty. And that's said right here. I'll highlight that as well. So, use context clues, use information in both the passage and the summary to help you out. Um, let's see. The summary is now in the chat. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. Try to reach this sentence limit around 3 to 5 sentences. And yeah, you guys can begin writing. All right, we got one answer submitted. Check this out. Okay, I'll check it out in a couple minutes. All right, so waiting for a bit too long here. I'm just gonna move on to the next activity. So, guys, we have our theme of psychology of power. And what we know so far is that power can be portrayed in different ways. We can enforce power using four different uh, methods: corruption, groupthink, leaders versus followers, and fear. So we briefly began discussing corruption, and we only did one question about corruption so far. I would like to check out the remaining two questions. Let's check this out. Yeah, and Faye, can you read the slide for us, please?
The council's first exception seemed harmless enough. Uh, regulated intended for everyone was temporarily suspended because they explained extraordinary circumstances demanded flammably. Months later, another exception followed, then another. Each decision was defended as practical rather than id ideolo ideological, and no single change appeared significant on its own. Only years afterward did an elderly clerk compare the newest policies with the originals stored in a forgotten archive. He
Archive.
archive. He realized that none of the founding principles had disappeared overnight. They had simply been revised so gradually that people no longer recognized how completely they had changed. Those who questioned the transformation were accused not of being incorrect, but of refusing to adapt to reality.
Okay, good stuff. So using this paragraph here, we're going to answer the remaining two questions. And here's the first one. Analyze the symbolism of the forgotten archive. I do want to see if we can get both questions done, so let's make these answers a little bit shorter. A couple sentences is fine, 2 to 3 sentences. And let's aim for around 5 minutes. If you have any questions, please let me know. But it's going to be a brief answer, so don't spend too long writing up a long answer. All right, so I got one answer submitted so far. Ethan, can you read your answer, please?
Forgotten, was it forgotten? Shit. Anyways, the forgotten thing was things that the elderly hides away and keeps to himself.
All right, so as you're saying, sounded like you wanted to include this question into your answer. Might as well do that in your writing. Don't do it while you're reading it out loud. Analyze the symbolism of the forgotten archive. So I believe the symbolism behind the forgotten archive is that um cross out this word. Okay. Is that the elderly hides away and keeps to himself. The elderly refers to a group of older individuals. So, do we have a group of people here? Yeah, looks like we do. So that means this has to be themselves, plural. Whoops. Okay. Um, okay, so we need to provide a little bit of explanation here because there is none. Um, yeah, that's really it. So for next time, provide an explanation to back up your statement. And also write in a full sentence. A few more minutes left. Let's try to get this last question done. Same passage. Next question is, why are critics described as refusing to adapt instead of being incorrect? So again, short answer, couple sentences is fine. Why are critics described as refusing to adapt? All right, we have another answer submitted. Let me put this on the screen. Oops. All right, Ethan, can you read your answer, please?
Because the critics are justified to question, but the council doesn't really appreciate that, and they would just try to shame them to make them stop asking questions, make them stop asking.
Okay, so we're starting a sentence with because. Not good. That's not formal writing. It's very unclear, so we don't know what we're talking about. Let's look at our question. Let me just grab the question and put it here. Why are critics described as refusing to adapt instead of being incorrect? So, critics are described as refusing to adapt because, and this is now a full sentence. Because the critics are justified to question, comma, but the council does not really appreciate that and will just try to shame, we don't need the word just, and will try to shame them to make they stop asking, to make them stop asking. Okay. Critics are described as refusing to adapt because the critics are justified to question. Huh. Right. So our explanation, whoops, is not relevant to the question. It's not really answering the question. They're not really related too closely. Let's see. Refusing to adapt. Hmm. Yeah, I think we just need to tie in some information together because this last part about them asking questions is true. It is correct. They were asking questions, but it's kind of, you just threw it in there. We need to provide more detail to tie in all of our points together so they don't sound random or unrelated. Okay, so that's it for today's class. We're out of time. We'll continue with this topic next week. I will see you guys next week. Take care.
You.